Hello, lords and ladies of YouTube, and welcome back to Nightly Gaming's Nightly Gaming and another episode of Kickstarter Roundup. So today, before we hop into the new games, featured games, and recommended back of the week, I wanted to go over two Kickstarter-related news stories. So I'll go ahead and start into those before I continue on. So Mesozoica, the featured one of the games that I featured last week, has been dealing with fake accounts, trying to put in false funds into their Kickstarter. They've figured it all out. There was a worry that what it was they were going to put in those fake funds and then pull them out at the last second. So those fake accounts have been dealt with, but it has messed with the Kickstarter of the game a little bit. I hope they do well. They seem to be doing better now. If you don't remember what Mesozoica is, it's a dinosaur park tycoon type game, so kind of a build your own Jurassic Park style game. And if you want to check them out, I will leave a link in the description to them. The second news story of the day that I wanted to cover was Kickstarter officially becoming a benefit corporation. So as their official company build is a benefit corporation, what this means is that they, as a company, are required to benefit the community. So they chose this willingly. So what their goal is to benefit the community. They list out what they're going to want to do in the future. They have a whole article about it. They mention the fact that only 0.01% of companies in America are benefit corporations. So congratulations to Kickstarter. I wanted to give that quick little shout out of information. If you guys want to see the article that they posted about it, I will leave a link in the description. So then after that, we can go ahead and move on to the games. So first off, the newest 4 Kickstarter games appear on Kickstarter are Killer Fog, an action RPG. It's a video game with an RPG video game with a very high level of difficulty. Doesn't look super impressive at first glance. I'm thinking they're trying to go along the routes of a Dark Souls type of a thing, where it's a very hard action RPG type game. Not sure how well it's going to be, but might be worth checking out. The second one is Alice Dreams Tournament. So it says Bomberman-like game with 6 original gameplay modes. Seems to be loosely based on Alice in Wonderland, I think. I see a rabbit and I see a girl that might potentially be Alice. I'm not sure though. But it looks like it could be fun enough. And it's already got quite a bit of funding actually. The next one is Vampire Hunter Game, which just has the description of Vampire Hunter Game in development. Probably not that promising. And let's see, the last one of the 4 newest Kickstarters is Club Life Visual Novel, a fun school-based visual novel for PC, Mac, and Linux, multiple choices and endings to be released on Steam and DRM free. So if you're into those visual novel books or type games, then that might be interesting to you. They never really have appealed to me that much, but it has also gathered quite a bit of funding already, and it looks like it could be decent enough for that genre. So if you're interested in any of those, go ahead and check them out. They will be on Kickstarter. You can always just go to the video game section and sort by newest, and you will see them. So let's see, moving on to the featured games of the week. So these are the games I like to go into a little bit more, in-depth review about and talk about, because they are games that I feel are worth the support. So the first one I'm going to be going is For the King by Iron Oak Games. They have their little description as embark on a perilous adventure with turn-based combat and strategic exploration in this single-player and online cooperative roguelike. So it kind of says it there. It is a roguelike adventure type game. So it has fun, stylized, polygon type graphics. It is 3D graphics. It has an interesting look to it. The world looks really interesting. There's quite a bit of variety going on there. There's some decent story it seems to put into the game. The idea is really interesting. It's a multiplayer roguelike, which is really unique and interesting in my opinion. I'm not sure how that multiplayer aspect is going to tie into that roguelike. Whether it just be friend-based games, things like that. But overall, I think it could be a very interesting idea. It also has a couple, little unique features of its own, such as there's a whole sailing mechanic where so you can sail around on the oceans. It is a turn-based game, so you have limited movement per turn on the board. But so sailing is an option. There's gods and demons that you can go to the god shrines, and the demons are going to try to mess with you and all that kind of stuff. There's different areas in the world, forested area, ice area, things like that. There's towns where you can rest up, but you have to be careful about staying in towns because sometimes thieves will try to steal from adventurers that come into the town. There's dungeons that you can go exploring through with turn-based combat. So it looks very interesting. There is some story behind it. The basic premise is the king dies, and then the queen decides to call on everyday folk to rise up and adventure and figure stuff out, things like that. So all the characters are based on everyday people. So there's the hunter, the scholar, the herbalist, all those kinds of things. The woodsman. So they have 6 base classes, but they sound like they want to expand into other types as well. Let's see what else. So they were already greenlit on Steam Greenlight, so they have gotten approval from that. That looks good and interesting. The game will be available on PC, Mac, and Linux, no console releases. It is technically already funded, but it looks very interesting, and it has some interesting stretch goals that are worth funding for, such as a new minstrel class, including some instrument-type weapons for that minstrel class. So if you're interested, they have 19 days left to fund before the Kickstarter goes offline. The rewards include things such as digital copies, beta access, the soundtrack, t-shirts. At the upper levels, you get to design your own hero or enemies, among many other types of rewards. So if you want to check them out, there will be a link in the description. I would definitely recommend poking your head over there in case you're interested in adventures, RPGs, or roguelikes. The next game that I'm going to be covering is Between Heartbeats by Blimbo Games. Their little description is playing as nanobot duo Cecil and Igor inside the veins of the body, fight against an evil virus in this action-packed shoot-'em-up. So it's a 2.5D game. It has it's a light-hearted shooting adventure game with very kind of toonish graphics. It's developed by students, actually. So they're still early on in their design careers, but the game itself is actually looking fairly promising, if admittedly a little basic. There appears to be some kind of puzzle-type elements to it, in the sense that you're not just going around shooting everything. You're kind of exploring around the veins as the 2 main characters that you can switch between. One is more combat related, one is more skill related. It's supposed to be the intelligent one. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. I find the concept interesting of swimming around inside the human body as almost like this nanobot medicine type thing where you're going around and killing the viruses. There's some interesting variety in the viruses, so they do have multiple virus types. You can switch between the different characters, so you get different abilities. This game has also been greenlit on Steam Greenlight, so that is a bonus. It will be available on Steam and Wii U, and depending on the funding, they want to have it on Xbox One and PS4. And whether or not the funding is to get them onto the consoles at all, or whether or not it's for a day one release isn't quite specified, but one of their stretch goals is to include a day one release of Xbox One and PS4s, as well as new languages. So they are just over $1,000 of their $9,000 goal, with about 17 days left to go. So they aren't asking for a huge amount, so any little bit can actually really help this game. So if you're interested, check them out. The rewards include things such as copies of the game, the soundtrack, an art book, special t-shirts, among other things. So I will leave a link to them down in the description below in case any of you are interested in backing them. The next one is a game called Aberford by Sketchy Panda Games. So this is a game that has their little title as Fight Social Norms and the Undead in a Pair of Killer Heels, a graphic adventure game with brawler-style combat. So this game is about 50s housewives stuck at the beginning of a zombie apocalypse. So you get to play through the chaos as the zombies first appear. So you're not, years later in the zombie apocalypse or anything like that. As the zombie apocalypse is beginning to happen. So it's a storytelling adventure game with some action sections mixed in. So think of it kind of like a mix between Telltale's Walking Dead and the Left 4 Dead series. So you have that deep storyline where you're making moral decisions and decisions on the survival of your group and things like that. But in between, you are having to fight through waves of zombies with you, and it's a four party members. So it's you and either 3 AI, or you can also do you and some other players. I'm not 100% sure how the other players are going to work based in the story sections, but it should be fun in the murdering zombie sections. So each character in the game actually has unique traits. So some of them are better with projectile weapons. Some of them are better with heavy weapons. Some of them are, can swing the heavy weapons faster or move faster with the heavy weapons. Some of them take less damage. Some of them have effects that can, mess with the zombies, things like that. So each character is a little bit different, as well as having an interesting backstory and add things different to the story. So that's an interesting part of it. The other thing is that the game focuses on tactical fighting rather than just running and gunning type combat during the zombie killing sections. So each zombie is basically supposed to be bigger and stronger than you. You're a little housewife who's just trying to survive the zombie apocalypse, and then you'll encounter big zombies who are clearly bigger and stronger than you. So you can't just run at them and beat them to death. They'll overpower you. So you have to focus on things such as throwing enemies off balance, or taking advantage of your agility to kind of get around them and dodge them, or being smart with how you use your weapons. They also want to avoid any kind of just over-the-top kind of weapons in the game. You're going to be dealing with things like frying pans, baseball bats, throwing things such as, I would assume like baseballs, things like that. So you're using these normal weapons rather than, you're not just going to find like the magical chainsaw that like rips through hordes of enemies, or giant machine guns that's just going to mow down entire armies of zombies. It's going to be much more tense and kind of tactical, is the way that it seems, in order to deal with the zombies. So the game is very early in development. They promise to smooth out some of the gameplay and graphic stuff that you can see a little bit in the trailer, where everything looks a little kind of jumpy. This is pre-alpha footage, and it's already looking fairly decent. But yeah, they're planning on smoothing that all out. So it's going to be available on PC only at the moment, but they do have a stretch goals of new languages as well as Mac and Linux support. So no console release planned, but it will be available on Macs and Linux depending on stretch goals. So they are almost at $65,000 of their goal, which is $675,000. So they still have quite a ways to go, but they do have 22 days left. It is looking like an interesting game. I would definitely check it out. If you are interested in backing them, rewards for the game include things such as a copy of the game, beta access, unique in-game clothing options, because you can actually change the clothes of the different characters. You can also get a printed copy of the Aberford Zombie Defense Committee Survival Guide, so you get a cool little booklet. You can also get things like t-shirts. They can, at the higher levels, they can do things like model an in-game zombie after you, as well as many other rewards. So link it to the description down below, so if you are interested, that will be there. And then we'll move on to our recommended game to back for the week, which is the game that I feel, out of all the games I'm talking about today, deserves the backing the most. So this week I'm going to be talking about The Dwarves by King Art Games. So King Art Games has actually had two previous successful Kickstarter games that have delivered on their promises. So this developer actually has a background that they can be trusted. So that right off the bat, it's a big deal at Kickstarter, is knowing that you're actually backing someone who knows what they're doing and will actually deliver. So the games that they have made before are Battle Worlds Chronos, and the Book of Unwritten Tales 2. Both had great reviews, both had a lot of love from the people who backed them. They were all very happy, so they have that background. But back to the game at hand, The Dwarves. The Dwarves is based on a book by a German author named Marcus Heitz, who made an entire series of fantasy novels that have become fairly popular. The Dwarves is based on the first book in the series. So you're going to follow a character named Tungdil, something along those lines. I'm not 100% sure on the pronunciation. I think it's Tungdil. Who's a dwarf who was actually raised by humans, who has never actually seen the Dwarven Kingdoms. All he has done is read about the Dwarven Kingdoms. But he decides to go on an adventure in Girdle Guard, which is kind of a loose gathering of 5 different kingdoms. So he goes in to experience the Dwarven Kingdoms firsthand through his adventures. So the game focuses on the dwarfs and the Dwarven culture. So that's a really interesting take. You don't usually see a lot of things focused purely on the dwarves, but this one is focused purely on the dwarves. With that said, though, it does include many other races. Some that are fighting against you, some that will team up with you, some of them will actually join your actual party. All the different ones look very interesting. So that is something that is definitely a benefit to them. The gameplay looks a little slow, but also looks very interesting and in-depth. So when you're watching the trailer, you'll kind of see it looks a little, he's kind of slugging through and smacking things and stuff like that. It is still an early build, so that could very easily change. But it's definitely an interesting look. So the whole thing that it bases itself around is this flock mentality of the enemies. So the enemies are going to group up and kind of try to chase you and try to overwhelm you with their numbers. But what's interesting is if you knock, this one big guy back and he falls into 3 of his friends will stagger and fall backwards as well. They react to how the other ones are acting. So the whole flock will act accordingly. So it's a much more realistic, interactive combat. And since you'll be a few dwarves, fighting against hundreds of enemies, you'll have to take advantage of these mechanics where you're knocking back enemies and things like that. You can also interact with the environment, like let's say there's a big hole or a cliff or you're on a bridge, you can knock them off. You can do all of those things. So you can knock large groups of enemies to their death. So if you can, smush them against the edge of a cliff or something and then do one big knockback to knock them all off, they will actually fall off and die. So that can be a great tactical way of taking advantage of the game. You will be playing as multiple characters who will be fighting who will be across the battlefield. You will be controlling one at a time to control their abilities. They will all continue fighting when you're not controlling them, but it'll just be basic attacks and things like that and defending. They'll only use their abilities when you're controlling them. And you really have to use these abilities to take control of the battlefield and be really strategic in how you go about it. It seems like it's going to have an RTS feel in the sense of when you're switching between the characters and moving things around and you're looking at the whole battlefield rather than just your character fighting and focusing on that. You're looking at how the whole battlefield's going. You're keeping track of your other characters and things like that. So it's meant to be a strategic game. It looks like a great overall just fantasy adventure game. It looks like it has some interesting story, it has some unique looking gameplay. It looks like it's just going to be a fun game overall. So that's why that's probably the main reason I would recommend backing this game. It looks like a really good game. Also a fun little interesting twist that they're doing is they're having all the backers that back the game appear in the credits, but instead of just having their names scroll by or things like that, they actually are going to have an army of orcs and ogres and stuff like that marching, getting ready to attack. They're going to have them marching across the screen, and there's going to be the names over all the different backers, and each different backing class gets assigned to a different character model. So you can actually see the army of backers walking through. So I found that to be a really interesting and unique concept. That's just really fun and adds a lot to wanting to back this game, even if it's just enough to get your name in the credits, just because it's that fun little army of characters walking through. Anyway, so the game is planned for PC, Mac, Linux, PS4, and Xbox One. So PS4 and Xbox One, as well as all computer-type systems. It is going to be planned to be released in mid-2016. They have almost reached their goal. They're just over $223,000 of their $260,000 goal, and they have 12 days left. So they still need a decent chunk of money to get there, but it definitely seems to be a game that would be worth supporting, and they are working their way up there. So I would definitely suggest going to support them. Some of the stretch goals that they have are things such as a co-op mode, character quests, a new character and quests related to that character, orchestrated music as well as dynamic music that changes depending on what's happening on screen, and new game modes including Horde mode and a new game plus mode, which seems like a hard mode basically for the game. Plus, all of these include a new language for the game chosen by the backers. And what's also interesting about this is instead of just set goals for those stretch goals, the stretch goals are actually chosen basically depending on how much extra money they get. They say you've unlocked 1, 2, or 3 or whatever stretch goals, and then the backers actually get to vote on which stretch goals they want to be unlocked. So it could be any of those stretch goals depending on how much they make. But yeah, so if you're interested in backing the game, the rewards include things such as digital copies of the game. You can get a physical copy at higher levels. You get beta and alpha access depending on how much you back them for. Copies of their 2 previous Kickstarter games, which is kind of nice. So you get some extra games for backing their game. You also can get either a digital copy or a physical copy of the world map depending on how much you back. Tabletop figurine, so a little plastic figurine that you can use for tabletop games of the main character. There's also tons and tons and tons of other backer rewards. This one's got a lot of them, and it's really nice. Most of them are really great rewards. So I definitely say make sure to check them out. They look like a great game, great campaign, trusted development team. So that's all good things. So if you want to check them out, I will leave a link in the description. The game is called The Dwarves, and that will be the featured game that I recommend to back this week. So thank you all so much for watching. If you have any comments on which games you thought were the most interesting out of this list, or games that you thought I should have backed, that I should have recommended backing, that I didn't mention, then let me know in the comment section down below. If you guys enjoyed the video, click the like button. If you want to see more from me, click the subscribe button so you can see my videos that I post once a day, every day, with Kickstarter Roundup being every Saturday. You can also go to my channel and check out all my previous videos. So thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you all next time. Bye!